Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Creeper, Sanguivore. I mean, feels somewhat apropos for a horror punk band releasing a project about vampires for me to say, be careful what you wish for. I just really wish I didn't have to say it. Because for a lot of folks, Creeper might have been one of the great surprises of 2017 with their debut album, but they lost a lot of folks hard with Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void in 2020, which tilted sharply into rock opera / borderline meatloaf territory, but didn't really have the production budget to sell it as powerfully as they wanted. Now, I personally still think that album and their follow-up EP, American Noir, that they're criminally underrated because the compositions and flair are strong enough in order to scythe through. But hey, maybe a change in label over to Spine Farm and bringing in Tom Dalgety, it would be the shot in the arm they need. He had worked with Ghost on Prequel, and the band, they were citing influences like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Sisters of Mercy. So in other words, I had high expectations for this album, and thus it kind of breaks my heart for me to say that I think this is probably their weakest album, despite them embracing the sound that should make all the sense in the world for them. Now, part of this is how, on a compositional level, not only are the parallels to their influences feeling all the more stark, and these influences have made some of my all-time favorite records, so again, high standards, but I'm not sure there's a hook here that matches even Creeper's best. Two different high bars, and I think they're falling short. And while a multi-part song like Further Than Forever shows some real ambition, the transitions and flow within that track are just not as sharp as they should be. But I think some of this also translates to the production as well. Even if their last album was really rough around the edges, there was that desperate, ragged energy that persisted and gave their songs so much unholy life. But now with the production cleaned up considerably, I found myself missing some of that well-earned grit. Or hell, just some well-defined bass lines with true low-end muscle, which makes me glare at Tom Dalgety because he did the exact same thing to Ghost with Prequel as well. Now, this having a slightly prettier sound, and given that this is telling a vampire love story, it makes a certain amount of sense. But as soon as that very specific pulsating synth timbre crept in on Lovers Led Astray and Black Heaven, I was also reminded very quickly of a lot of very tedious vampiric darkwave, where the aesthetic has just felt very conventional and played out for me, especially in comparison to all the wild genre experimentation on Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void. A real shame because I actually really dug the riffs on both those songs, but there's nothing close to the lightning in a bottle that was the saxophone on Paradise. Now, this could be where the lyrics might save the album, and you know what, I'll admit there's a couple cool turns of phrase in this love story between a young female vampire and the older man that she controls, and then turns into a vampire as she slowly rediscovers some humanity, falling in love. But this is also where I look at Jim Steinman's over-the-top swings at melodrama, or Nick Cave's impeccable eye for lyrical texture and detail, and in comparison, Creeper feels closer to off-Broadway theater or maybe even the Grindhouse. And that sits at odds with compositions that are trying to carry that much more operatic gravitas. And it's all the more frustrating because Creeper really want to tell those grand gothic romances and get truly visceral. And hell, on Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void, they show the ambition to occasionally stick the landing. But there's also a level of emotional depth and storytelling and flair that desperately needs a little more meat in order to satisfy it all, or at least a better sense of the scale and the stakes. Overall, look, I can't deny it's a fun release, and a lot of Creeper's high standard of quality does shine through. I like Will Gould's impressive vocal range, even if again I think they really missed the opportunity to do more with Hannah Greenwood in contrast to him, given the dynamic on the album especially. And yeah, the guitars have a lot of punch, the piano work is wild and nails some of that Jim Steinman-esque flair, and if you're looking for a solid vampiric romp for Halloween, there are enough good songs that will make that work, like Cry to Heaven or Teenage Sacrifice, or a really strong ballad closer with More Than Death. But I also feel like this was a real missed opportunity with a new producer and a new label to knock one out of the park, and I just don't think it gets all the way there. It's really quite good, just not great. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to see more reviews, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, and subscribe. I'm curious for Creeper fans where you fall on this. I know it's getting a lot of critical acclaim. I'm just not all the way there. Again, I like the aesthetic, but I wish they would have done a little more with this. Beyond that though, if you guys want to get albums on my schedule, link to my Patreon's right over there. And as always, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.